My name is Amaka Eze. I was born in Owerri, Imo State, but most of my assignments happened in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, especially in GRA Phase 2 and Rumuola. I am not proud of what I'm about to say. There are demons that do not disturb you while you are single. They don't block your job. They don't stop your engagement. They don't fight your wedding plans. They clap, they wait, and then they activate. I know because I was part of the department that handled marriage activations. Yes, there are departments, and my unit was called Covenant Interception. It started in 2013, my recruitment. I had just finished my NYSC in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. I was posted to a private school in Ewet Housing Estate. That was where I met Auntie Ifunanya. She looked normal, church going, always quoting scripture, wore long skirts. But she was what we called a gatekeeper. She never introduced witchcraft directly. She started with, "You are too spiritually sensitive to waste your gift." She took me to a prayer group in Rumu Okoro one Friday night. It wasn't a prayer group. It was an initiation chamber disguised as intercession. There were 12 of us that night. We fasted. We sang worship songs. We prayed in tongues. Then at exactly 1:17 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. The leader, a man called Pastor Edwin, removed his clerical collar. He said, "Tonight you cross." We drank something mixed with palm wine and something metallic. By 3 a.m., I was no longer normal. I did not start high. I started as an observer. Observers watch people's lives and report patterns, engagements, pregnancies, promotion seasons, breakthrough cycles. That is when I first learned marriage is not romantic in the spirit. Marriage is a legal covenant, and covenants create spiritual doors. That is why we don't disturb many believers before marriage. We wait for the covenant to be signed. Single people are unstable legally, but marriage creates sexual covenants, blood covenants if virginity involved, name exchange covenants, family altar linkage. Once that happens, access multiplies. That is when certain spirits gain permission. My first marriage assignment was in 2015. The target was Chinedu and Blessing Okafor, living at Eliozu, Port Harcourt. They attended a Pentecostal ministry in Ada George. They were prayerful while dating, midnight prayers, fasting, courtship counseling. We could not penetrate. So our leaders said, let them marry first. Their wedding was on August 22nd, 2015. Very beautiful ceremony. I attended physically. Yes, sometimes we attend physically. I wore gold lace. I hugged the bride. I gave her a gift. Inside that gift was an anointed fabric from our altar. She placed it on their matrimonial bed. There is something that happens after consummation. When sex seals covenant, a spiritual gate flashes open for seconds. That flash is enough. At 2:13 a.m., after they slept, we projected, not to kill, to plant. We planted suspicion, comparison, subtle dissatisfaction. Nothing dramatic, just seeds. First month was peaceful. Second month, small arguments. By month 6, Blessing started feeling emotionally neglected. Chinedu started feeling unappreciated. Nobody could explain why. They went for counseling. Nothing worked. Why? Because the attack was not external. It was internal implantation. That marriage lasted 4 years. They separated in 2019. No adultery, no abuse. Just we grew apart. That is how clean marriage destruction looks when done professionally. We don't attack before marriage because before marriage, families are not spiritually linked. Sexual covenant is incomplete. Authority structure is not sealed. But once I do is spoken, a legal document forms in the spirit realm. And if there is any unbroken ancestral altar on either side, we enter through it. My second assignment was against a quiet husband, Tari and Ibiso Douglas, living in Borokiri, Port Harcourt. This one was different. Ibiso came from a riverine family with strong water spirit heritage, but he was born again. He thought salvation erased covenants automatically. It does not. Unbroken foundations still speak. We waited. Wedding took place in December 2017. This time, our assignment was not suspicion. It was sexual distortion, not perversion, just incompatibility. We reduced emotional bonding after intimacy. We made sex mechanical. After 8 months, Tari started believing maybe I married the wrong person. He became withdrawn. She became controlling. No witch appeared physically. No nightmare. Just slow emotional erosion. The truth about wedding night spirits is this. There are demons assigned specifically to first sexual union, first pregnancy, first major marital disagreement. They are dormant until covenant seal. That is why some couples date for 5 years peacefully and start fighting 3 weeks after marriage. It is not personality, it is activation. You want to know the truth? What makes them legal? The door is rarely opened on wedding night. The door was opened years before through sexual partners before marriage, family altars never renounced, words spoken during anger, bridal shower rituals people joke with, gifts placed on matrimonial beds. We exploit legality. We don't force entry. The assignment that broke me was in 2020. This one changed everything. The target was Pastor Daniel and Esther Adebayo, living in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos. This was not ordinary believers. They were intercessors. Their dating season was clean. Their prayer life was aggressive. We could not penetrate. So the instruction came. If you cannot stop the marriage, contaminate the covenant. This time, I was not observer. I was lead operative. And what we did that night still disturbs me. The assignment in Lekki was different. By 2020, I had risen in rank. I was no longer just observing marriages. I was coordinating covenant interference operations. The target couple, Pastor Daniel and Esther A., were not careless Christians. They had gone through 6 months of premarital counseling. They fasted every Wednesday. They prayed at midnight during their engagement. We monitored them from afar. Nothing worked. No sexual compromise. No hidden affair. No bitterness between families. That is when our superior said something I will never forget. When righteousness blocks entry, look for transferred objects. Objects. That was when I understood something most believers don't. Sometimes, the doorway into marriage is not character weakness, it is transfer. Their wedding was held in Lekki, white canopy, outdoor reception, worship team singing softly. It looked holy, but spiritually, weddings are loud events. Altars activate, ancestral lines listen, past covenants react. When two bloodlines merge, unseen systems assess the union. You think marriage is between two people. It is not. It is between two histories. Our strategy was simple. We could not enter through sin, so we entered through sentiment. A gift arrived from a distant relative, a beautiful antique mirror. No one questioned it. The mirror had history. Objects carry memory. Memory carries agreement. The mirror was placed in the bridal room, directly opposite the bed. There is a spiritual law many don't understand. Marriage consummation seals authority alignment. It creates what I was taught to call a covenant echo. For a brief window, sometimes seconds, the spiritual environment is vulnerable. Not because sex is evil, but because covenant is powerful. That night, after they slept, the atmosphere shifted. We did not appear physically. We never do. We amplified internal whispers. That is how marriage spirits work. Not possession, amplification. 3 weeks after marriage, Esther began feeling unseen. Daniel began feeling pressured. Nothing dramatic, just subtle emotional misalignment. He thought she was becoming too demanding. She thought he was emotionally unavailable. Both were wrong. Both were sincere. But the whisper was constant. You chose wrongly. That is the seed. If it grows, the marriage becomes a battlefield. Demons wait until marriage because marriage increases emotional exposure. Single people can withdraw easily. Married people cannot. Marriage forces vulnerability, and vulnerability is where whispers sound louder. 6 months later, Esther conceived. Pregnancy is another covenant activation point, especially first pregnancies, because it introduces a new bloodline extension, a new generational gate, a new spiritual inheritance. This was when the assignment escalated. We were instructed not to destroy the marriage, just weaken unity before the child arrived, because children born into divided homes grow with spiritual fractures. The attacks started with dreams. Esther began dreaming that Daniel was abandoning her. Daniel began dreaming that Esther was disrespecting him publicly. They never told each other immediately. Silence creates space. Space creates interpretation. Interpretation creates offense. This is how many marriages begin dying quietly, not with adultery, not with abuse, but with internal narrative distortion. One night around 2:40 a.m., I projected to monitor. I expected emotional tension. Instead, I saw something else. They were praying together, crying, holding hands, repenting to each other. They didn't even know what they were fighting, but they sensed resistance, and they fought it spiritually. That prayer created heat. Heat in the spirit realm is dangerous for dark operatives. It weakens attachment points. The mirror in their room cracked 2 days later. Nobody touched it. When the mirror cracked, the access points destabilized. I reported failure. That was the first time I questioned everything, because I saw something we were never taught. Marriage is not fragile by default. It is legally powerful. What weakens it is unhealed trauma, unrenounced family patterns, unaddressed spiritual agreements. But when two people intentionally guard their covenant, access shrinks. There are specific spirits assigned to honeymoon season, first financial crisis, first childbirth, in-law conflict, sexual dissatisfaction. But none of them operate randomly. They look for unforgiveness, silence, pride, shame, spiritual negligence. Without those, they struggle. After the Lekki assignment failed, I was angry. I volunteered for a more aggressive operation. Location was Enugu. That was the operation that began my collapse. And it involved a couple who were not spiritually alert at all. That assignment succeeded, but the cost was my peace. After the Lekki failure, my rank was unstable. Failure in covenant operations was not tolerated. Marriage units were considered strategic departments because strong marriages produce spiritually stable families, and stable families are harder to infiltrate. So when the Enugu assignment came, I volunteered. Target location, Independence Layout, Enugu, in the year 2021. The couple, Ikenna and Somto M. They were financially comfortable. He owned a logistics company. She worked remotely for a firm in Abuja. They were not spiritually intense people. They believed in God. They attended church occasionally, but they were not watchful. And that is the difference. Before marriage, they had dated for 3 years. They lived separately. Arguments were minimal. They traveled together. They believed marriage would complete what was already working. But here were the openings. Sexual history on both sides, deep resentment between their mothers, financial secrecy during engagement, unresolved jealousy from past relationships. None of these destroyed their relationship while dating, but marriage magnifies what dating hides. That is the rule. The wedding was elegant. Traditional marriage in Nkanu West, white wedding in Enugu town, loud celebration, families smiling. But during the traditional rites, something happened spiritually. When libation was poured to honor ancestors, a line was opened. Nobody there saw it as spiritual access. They saw it as culture. But culture carries memory. Memory carries covenant, and covenant creates access. We didn't enter immediately, we marked. The first 2 months were joyful. Pictures on Instagram, romantic captions, trips to Obudu. That is another thing people don't understand. We don't attack during happiness. We wait until the first real disagreement, because first conflicts after marriage determine pattern. Month 3, Somto discovered Ikenna had not disclosed a business loan. Not a secret family, not cheating, just financial withholding. But marriage amplifies breach of transparency. We amplified the thought. If he hid this, what else is he hiding? Suspicion entered, not evidence, just suggestion. Ikenna's mother visited from the village. She stayed 2 weeks. During that visit, she made subtle comments. In our time, wives wake earlier. My son has changed since marriage. Small words, but repeated words create internal pressure. Somto felt judged. Instead of discussing calmly, she withdrew emotionally. Withdrawal is one of the easiest spiritual openings. Silence breeds imagination. Imagination breeds narrative. Narrative breeds division. Around month 7, I projected during an argument. I saw something I had never seen before. A shadow standing behind both of them, not attached to one person, attached to the marriage itself. It fed on reaction, not anger alone, reaction. Every time one raised their voice, the shadow intensified. Every time one stormed out, it grew denser. That was when I understood something disturbing. Some spirits are not assigned to individuals. They are assigned to covenants. By month 9, intimacy declined, not because of physical inability, because emotional trust had weakened. They began using intimacy as negotiation, reward and punishment. That is a dangerous cycle. Because once intimacy becomes transactional, connection becomes fragile. And fragile connection is easy to fracture. We amplified comparison. Comparison is lethal in marriage. My friend's husband is more romantic. Other wives don't complain this such. Comparison introduces invisible competitors. and invisible competitors create dissatisfaction. Month 14 was the final break. An accusation during an argument. Maybe I made a mistake marrying you. That sentence is powerful. Words spoken in anger create spiritual echoes. That night, the atmosphere shifted heavily. What had been whispers became oppression. They stopped praying together completely. They stopped eating at the same time. They stopped discussing future plans. By month 18, separation happened. No adultery, no violence, just exhaustion. And that is how many marriages collapse, not explosion, erosion. After that assignment, something followed me home, something changed. I began hearing internal whispers, even when not on assignment. I would wake at 3 a.m. feeling watched, not by a superior, by something else. The same shadow I saw behind their marriage, it followed me. I realized something terrifying. When you help destroy covenants repeatedly, you attract covenant judgment. Peace left me. I became irritable, paranoid, emotionally unstable. The same tactics we used on couples began affecting me. Suspicion, restlessness, isolation. That is when fear entered my heart. Not fear of humans, fear of consequence. Here is what most people don't know. These spirits cannot create problems from nothing. They can only magnify unhealed wounds, hidden pride, fear of vulnerability, generational patterns. If a couple heals those intentionally, access collapses. But most couples focus on wedding planning, not spiritual preparation. They prepare the hall, not the covenant, and after marriage, they relax spiritually. That is when the waiting spirits activate. One night, I tried to project again. Instead of entering a target home, I saw myself standing alone. No power, no shield, no authority, just emptiness. And a thought hit me. If you ever marry, this same department will be assigned to you. That thought shattered me because I realized something brutal. There is no loyalty in darkness, only use. After the Enugu assignment, I was no longer confident. You must understand something about dark systems. They do not reward doubt, they punish hesitation, and I had begun hesitating. In the year 2022, Gwarimpa Estate, Abuja, the couple I was assigned to monitor, Femi and Adora K, they were newly married. He worked in government contracting. She ran an online business. They were not perfect Christians, but they had something rare, intentional unity. Before their wedding, they had done something we hated. They sat down and discussed family patterns, sexual history, financial transparency, emotional triggers, generational issues, and they prayed about them deliberately. Most couples avoid those conversations. They did not. That reduced entry points. But the order was clear. Find weakness. Exploit first crisis. 3 months into marriage, Femi's contract was suspended. Income dropped suddenly. Pressure entered the home. Financial instability is one of the most powerful marital triggers because money affects ego, security, respect, fear. We waited for arguments. It did not come. They were afraid, yes. But instead of accusing each other, they made a budget together. Then they prayed together, not dramatic prayer, just simple agreement. Agreement is spiritually dangerous to darkness because unity closes legal doors. I attempted access one Friday at 1:30 a.m. Instead of whispers, I encountered resistance. Not angels, not lightning, just covenant clarity. They had established verbal boundaries in their marriage. We will never insult each other. We will never threaten divorce. We will speak before resentment grows. We will not allow outsiders to dictate our narrative. We will not allow outsiders to dictate our narrative. Words create structure. Structure limits infiltration. For the first time, I could not amplify anything because there was no hidden narrative to magnify, no suppressed resentment, no silent comparison, nothing. Here is the secret most believers never hear. Marriage is not weak. Marriage is unguarded, and unguarded covenants become vulnerable, but guarded covenants become fortified. Spirits that wait until marriage depend on silence, ego, secrecy, unforgiveness, spiritual laziness. Remove those, and their influence shrinks dramatically. After 3 failed operations, Lekki, partial resistance, Enugu, success but spiritual backlash, Abuja, total resistance, I was summoned. In the system I operated in, repeated covenant failures means demotion. But what happened next shocked me. I was told, your emotional instability is weakening your projection. I realized something horrifying. The same instability we planted in marriage was now inside me. Suspicion, restlessness, insecurity. Dark systems consume their own operatives. There is no peace in destruction, only recycling of chaos. The moment I walked away did not happen in a church. It did not happen during deliverance. It happened in exhaustion. I was tired of watching homes erode slowly, tired of amplifying whispers that did not originate from love, tired of knowing that if I ever married, I would be targeted the same way. That night, alone in my apartment in Wuse 2, I spoke words I had never spoken before. I withdraw my agreement. That was the beginning. Leaving darkness is not dramatic, it is gradual. But once agreement is broken, authority weakens. Let me speak plainly now. There are influences that wait until marriage, not because marriage is cursed, but because marriage is powerful. It merges histories. It exposes wounds. It demands vulnerability. Anything unhealed becomes visible, and visibility can either create healing or division. The demons many blame are often amplified. Unresolved trauma, family dysfunction patterns, pride, poor communication, emotional immaturity. I repeat, unresolved trauma, family dysfunctions patterns, pride, poor communication, emotional immaturity. Spiritual language aside, marriage requires preparation, deep preparation, not just ceremony, not just dress, not just honeymoon, but emotional honesty, financial transparency, forgiveness practice, clear boundaries with extended family, shared spiritual values. Without those, marriage feels attacked. With those, marriage becomes resilient. Why they wait until the wedding night is because dating hides, marriage reveals. Dating allows exit, marriage demands endurance. Dating masks insecurity, marriage exposes it. So, what feels like a sudden attack after I do is often exposure of what was already present, and exposure feels violent. My warning is this: if you are single, do not prepare only for wedding photos. Prepare for covenant maintenance. Heal before you merge. Break patterns before you link bloodlines. Have difficult conversations before vows. If you are married, guard your words, guard your silence, guard your unity, because unity is spiritual armor and agreement is protection. I once believed marriage was the easiest covenant to fracture. Now I know it is one of the hardest when two people choose awareness. Darkness thrives in ignorance. It weakens in intentionality. If you remove secrecy, pride, and silence from your marriage, there is very little left to manipulate. And that is the truth I was never supposed to tell.